Elena's voice thundered across the silent lobby. "Marcus, step back now, or you'll see a secret worth $1 billion. One that could shatter everything you thought you knew. Watch until the end to see how this incredible story unfolds, and let us know what time you're watching today." The evening air was cool and damp as the city exhaled a soft hum of life. At the heart of this urban tapestry stood the Grand, a hotel whose faded grandeur whispered stories of bygone eras. Its time-worn brick facade and softly glowing windows told tales of countless guests and secrets carefully tucked away in its halls. The lobby, with its polished marble floor and gently flickering chandeliers, was a realm of contrasts, a blend of old-world charm and modern bustle, where every sound and scent evoked a memory. Behind the sleek front desk worked Elena, the hotel receptionist, whose presence was as enigmatic as the hotel itself. She moved with quiet precision, her dark eyes scanning each visitor with a blend of detachment and intensity. Her uniform was immaculate, every crease in place, yet beneath that composed exterior lay layers of unspoken stories and hidden burdens. Elena had served at the Grand for many years, and in that time, her stern manner had become both her shield and her signature. There was an unyielding firmness in her voice, a command that brooked no nonsense. Yet if one looked closely, there were moments when a flicker of vulnerability softened her gaze. On this particular night, as rain began to trace silver paths down the glass doors, the lobby's warm lights mingled with the cool blues of the storm outside. A subtle aroma of lemon polish and old wood filled the air, carrying with it hints of memories and unspoken histories. In the background, the gentle hum of a piano played somewhere in the depths of the building, its melody weaving seamlessly with the murmur of distant conversations and the soft clink of cutlery from the hotel's restaurant. It was into this intricate tapestry that Marcus stepped, tall and dignified. He carried himself with a quiet confidence that belied the weight of his past. His smooth, ebony skin and calm, penetrating eyes set him apart, drawing curious glances from those around him. As he approached the reception desk, the sound of his footsteps merged with the rhythmic tapping of raindrops on the window pane, a soft percussion marking his arrival. Marcus's face was thoughtful, etched with lines that spoke of both struggle and resilience. He had traveled far and wide, collecting experiences like precious jewels, yet tonight there was a certain apprehension in his eyes, as if he sensed that the Grand held a secret of its own. "Good evening," Marcus said in a measured tone as he reached the desk. His voice was low and steady, a sound that seemed to resonate with the understated elegance of the lobby. Elena's eyes briefly met his, and in that fleeting moment, something unspoken passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of a tension that neither of them could fully explain. "Good evening, sir," Elena replied, her voice crisp and deliberate. There was a hardness to her words, a protective barrier that kept her true feelings concealed. She slid a small ledger toward him and began the routine of checking him in, her hands moving with practiced ease as she input his details into the computer. Yet as she worked, her mind drifted momentarily to the private world behind her composed mask, a world where every polite smile was a carefully rehearsed performance, and every curt reply was a defense against prying questions. The lobby itself seemed to hold its breath in that delicate pause, as if aware that beneath the routine interactions of everyday life, larger dramas were about to unfold. The soft hum of conversation faded into the background while Elena's and Marcus's brief exchange hung in the air, a subtle reminder that in a place like the Grand, nothing was ever entirely as it appeared. Elena had always carried a secret, a truth so profound that it weighed on her like an unyielding shadow. Every day, as she greeted guests with an air of detachment, she hid behind the guise of an ordinary receptionist. Yet inside her, a fire burned, a memory of a life once lived in a different light. In quiet moments, when the demands of her job subsided and the hotel's corridors fell silent, she would allow herself to recall whispers of a past where she was not merely a gatekeeper to others' temporary comforts, but someone of immense influence and fortune. That secret, so carefully guarded, was the foundation of her very existence, a billion-dollar truth that, if ever revealed, would shatter the fragile balance she had so meticulously constructed. Marcus, on the other hand, was a traveler whose life had been marked by unexpected turns and quiet resilience. Born into hardship, yet driven by an insatiable curiosity, he had long since learned to read the silent stories in the eyes of strangers. As he accepted his room key, a small, ornate card that promised respite from the storm outside, his gaze drifted around the lobby. He noticed the subtle interactions of the staff, the way their smiles rarely reached their eyes, and he wondered if each held a secret of their own. For Marcus, every encounter was a mystery waiting to be unraveled, a puzzle of human emotion and hidden motivations. At that moment, a soft chime echoed from the entrance as another guest arrived, a middle-aged man with a gentle demeanor, his eyes twinkling with a kind of warm familiarity. He greeted Elena with a nod and a few words of thanks as he passed through the lobby, his presence adding yet another layer to the evening's unfolding narrative. This man, whose name was Henry, was a regular at the Grand, a retired professor with a lifelong passion for art and literature. He often spent his evenings immersed in the hotel's quiet corners, reading or engaging in thoughtful conversation. Henry's calm and reflective nature provided a subtle counterpoint to the undercurrents of tension that wove through the reception area. As the night deepened and the storm outside grew more insistent, Elena busied herself with the steady stream of guests seeking shelter. Each arrival brought a brief collision of stories: a businessman hurrying to his meeting, a family on vacation, a lonely traveler in search of solace. Through it all, Elena maintained her steadfast composure, her eyes occasionally betraying a glimmer of regret or longing before she quickly refocused on her duties. Meanwhile, Marcus settled into the plush armchair in the lobby, his thoughts wandering back to the brief exchange with Elena. There was something in her demeanor, a guarded look, a slight tightening of her lips, that hinted at a past she was determined to keep hidden. And yet, there was also an undeniable strength in her, resilience forged in the fires of personal loss and the burdens of an unspoken legacy. The hotel's corridors, lined with rich, dark wood paneling and adorned with faded portraits of past luminaries, held whispers of forgotten secrets. Every step taken along those hallways was a step into a labyrinth of memory and mystery. As Marcus observed the interplay of light and shadow, he found himself drawn to the idea that every person in this hotel was, in some way, a keeper of stories, stories that could transform the ordinary into the extraordinary with a single revelation. In the quiet spaces between the murmurs of the lobby and the distant clatter of a service cart, he pondered the nature of truth and the masks that people wore in their everyday lives. Later, as the storm's fury subsided to a gentle drizzle, Elena took a rare moment to retreat to a quiet corner behind the reception desk. There, in the soft glow of a hidden lamp, she allowed herself to be momentarily vulnerable. In solitude, she traced the outline of a delicate locket that hung around her neck, a relic from a past long sealed away. The locket was more than a sentimental keepsake. It was a symbol of the life she had once dreamed of and the sacrifices she had made. Every time her fingers brushed against its cool surface, she was reminded of promises and ambitions that had once seemed so tangible. It was a reminder of a world beyond the reception desk, a world where fortunes were made and secrets were currency. Unbeknownst to Elena, Marcus too found solace in the quiet moments. As he sipped on a cup of weak hotel coffee, his mind wandered to the subtle signs that hinted at something greater beneath the surface of everyday interactions. The gentle clink of porcelain, the soft rustle of newspapers being folded, and the murmur of hushed conversations all combined to create a symphony of unspoken tales. In that symphony, he sensed a discordant note, a hidden melody that only those willing to listen could perceive. And in that moment, he resolved that his journey here was not merely about finding shelter from the storm, but about discovering the truths that lay hidden behind polite smiles and carefully curated facades. The hours passed with a steady rhythm, each minute filled with small, significant details that built the tapestry of the evening. A guest's quiet laughter mingled with the soft strains of the piano. A whispered exchange between two travelers hinted at old grudges and secret alliances, and amidst it all, Elena continued to perform her role with an unwavering dedication. Yet, every so often, as she handed over room keys or adjusted a reservation, her eyes would betray a moment of hesitation, a fleeting glimpse of the turmoil beneath her practiced exterior. It was as if, for a brief second, the weight of her secret nearly broke through the surface, only to be locked away once more behind a firm set of lips and a determined gaze. Marcus, seated near the large bay window, watched these moments with quiet curiosity. He had learned long ago that every human being was a repository of unspoken stories, and tonight, as he observed Elena's subtle shifts in expression, he sensed that she was guarding something extraordinary. There was an intensity to her that went beyond the routine of her job, a depth that spoke of a life lived on the edge of two very different worlds. He wondered if, behind that stern exterior, there lay a story of passion, ambition, and perhaps even regret. His thoughts drifted to the idea that sometimes the most remarkable secrets were hidden in plain sight, disguised as the mundane routines of everyday life. As the evening wore on, the interplay between light and shadow in the lobby grew more pronounced. The golden glow from the overhead lamps battled with the encroaching darkness of the night, creating pockets of mystery where conversations turned hushed and glances were exchanged with a measure of cautious curiosity. Elena moved among these shadows like a silent sentinel, her every step measured and purposeful. With each interaction, she left behind a trace of herself, a hint of the person she once was, and the person she had become out of necessity. At one point, a minor commotion stirred near the entrance when a guest arrived in a flurry of urgency, clutching a worn leather briefcase and casting nervous glances over his shoulder. Elena's reaction was immediate, a brief, sharp command that sent the guest stumbling into the reception area with a startled apology. The brief interruption left the air charged, and for a moment, the usual cadence of the lobby faltered. Marcus's eyes met Elena's again, and he saw in them not anger, but a fierce determination born of years of guarding what was precious to her. In that silent exchange, a subtle promise of deeper stories was made, one that would, in time, unravel the carefully spun tapestry of her life. Henry, the retired professor who had been quietly observing for his corner seat, offered a gentle smile as if acknowledging the transient nature of human emotions. He had seen many such moments in his long life and understood that every person carried within them a universe of hidden hopes and regrets. His presence, calm and reflective, served as a reminder that while the hotel was a stage for fleeting dramas, there was also beauty in the quiet acceptance of life's unpredictable turns. The storm outside eventually gave way to a calmer night, and the soft patter of raindrops against the windows became a gentle lullaby for those seeking refuge in the Grand. In the fading light, as the lobby slowly emptied and the remaining guests retreated to their rooms, Elena remained at her post. Alone with her thoughts, she allowed herself a moment of introspection. The locket around her neck felt heavier than usual, as if it were brimming with the weight of secrets too dangerous to share. She recalled memories of a time when her dreams were as vivid as the city lights outside, dreams of wealth, influence, and a life unfettered by the limitations of circumstance. But fate, it seemed, had led her down a different path, one where every smile concealed a sorrow and every stern word was a shield against vulnerability. Marcus, now making his way to his room after a long day of travel, paused in the lobby to glance back at the reception desk. There was a quiet intensity in his eyes as he took in the sight of Elena, who remained behind the counter like a guardian of hidden truths. He felt a growing curiosity, an inexplicable pull to understand the mystery that surrounded her. In that silent moment, he promised himself that he would not leave this night without uncovering at least a fragment of the story locked within her guarded heart. In the ensuing hours, as the hotel settled into a hushed calm, the stage was quietly set for what was to come. The Grand, with its intricate blend of shadows and light, of whispered secrets and unspoken promises, had become a crucible for destinies yet to be revealed. Elena's secret, so carefully concealed behind the routine of her daily tasks, waited in the quiet recesses of her mind, its potential to upend everything balanced precariously on the edge of revelation. The lobby, with its interplay of soft music and echoing silence, bore witness to the collision of lives and destinies. Every detail, from the subtle creak of the ancient floorboards to the lingering scent of fresh rain mingled with aged polish, served as a reminder that beneath the veneer of normality, extraordinary stories simmered just below the surface. And as Marcus closed the door to his room behind him, the gentle click of the latch resonated like the turning of a page in a book whose next chapter was about to unfold. In that charged atmosphere, the stage was set not only for a confrontation of personalities, but for a revelation that would shake the very foundations of trust and identity. Elena, with her guarded eyes and unwavering exterior, carried within her a secret so profound it was worth billions, a secret that, once uncovered, would alter the lives of all who encountered her. And Marcus, whose journey had led him here in search of answers to his own quiet questions, stood on the brink of discovering that not all secrets remain hidden forever. As the night deepened and the soft glow of early dawn began to seep through the heavy curtains of the lobby, a sense of impending change filled the air. The Grand, a silent witness to the unfolding drama, held its breath, ready to embrace the mysteries that would soon burst forth. For in every quiet corridor and every fleeting glance, there lay the promise of betrayal and the possibility of redemption, a promise that every heart, no matter how scarred, carried the potential for both ruin and resurrection. In that delicate balance between light and shadow, between the familiar and the unknown, the story of Elena and Marcus began its slow, inexorable journey. Their paths, marked by past regrets and future uncertainties, were poised to collide in ways neither could foresee. And as the first light of dawn painted the lobby in soft hues of gold and pink, the silent question lingered in the air. How much of the truth were they both willing to risk for the sake of understanding, and what price would that truth demand? The hotel stood as a silent keeper of secrets, its ancient walls absorbing every whispered word and every silent tear. In that moment, as the world outside stirred with the promise of a new day, the stage was quietly set for a dramatic interplay of hidden motives and unspoken desires. Elena's guarded strength and Marcus's quiet determination were but two threads in a larger tapestry of human experience, threads that, when woven together, promised to reveal a pattern of betrayal, hope, and the ultimate search for redemption. And so, with hearts heavy with unspoken histories and eyes fixed on the uncertain horizon, the lives of Elena and Marcus began to intertwine, drawing them inexorably toward a confrontation that would shatter preconceptions and force them to confront the truths buried deep within. In the silence of the early morning, amidst the gentle hum of a waking city, the seeds of distrust, mystery, and possibility were sown, a promise that in the coming hours, every carefully guarded secret would be tested by the relentless forces of fate. Every whispered sigh, every hesitant smile, and every cautious step taken in that hushed lobby spoke of a future where nothing was ever as it seemed. It was a future where a single moment of vulnerability could reveal a hidden legacy, and where the collision of two very different lives would spark a transformation neither had anticipated. The Grand, with all its imperfections and hidden depths, was ready to bear witness to a story of betrayal, redemption, and the unexpected power of secrets, a story that was only just beginning to unfold in the quiet corners of a city that never truly slept. In that profound stillness, as the hotel prepared for the new day, both Elena and Marcus carried with them the silent weight of their own untold stories. Elena's secret, as valuable as it was dangerous, remained locked away behind her carefully maintained composure. Marcus, drawn by an intuitive sense of destiny, was poised to uncover it, setting in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the course of their lives. And in the delicate interplay of light and shadow that defined the Grand, every detail, from the soft murmur of the rain to the resolute look in Elena's eyes, hinted at the explosive revelations waiting just around the corner. As the morning light grew stronger and the first guests of the day began to stir in their rooms, the lingering silence in the lobby was filled with the promise of change. The Grand, with its rich history and hidden scars, stood as a testament to the fact that every building, no matter how grand or ordinary, held within it the echoes of lives once lived and secrets waiting to be told. And so, in that timeless moment between night and day, the first chapter of a story defined by tension, mystery, and the power of unspoken truths was set in motion. A story that would lead Elena and Marcus down a path where trust was as fragile as glass and every revelation carried the weight of $1 billion secret. With the new day unfolding, the hotel lobby remained a quiet stage for lives intermingling in subtle, profound ways. Elena, ever watchful and vigilant, continued her work with a determined grace, each small gesture reminder of the burdens she carried silently. Marcus, with eyes now brightened by the clarity of dawn, carried a deep sense of curiosity and anticipation. In that shared space, beneath the surface of everyday routines, lay the promise of dramatic encounters and a journey into the heart of secrets that could redefine everything they thought they knew. And as the first rays of the sun filtered through the tall windows of the Grand, illuminating the polished marble and revealing the delicate interplay of dust motes in the morning air, a quiet certainty settled over the hotel. That this day, like every day before it, would be marked by the silent, inexorable unfolding of fate, a fate that for Elena and Marcus was about to rewrite the rules of trust, loyalty, and the very nature of truth. In that gentle, hopeful light, the story of the evening began to settle into memory, a memory that would soon be challenged by revelations, betrayals, and a confrontation that would force every character to look within themselves. The Grand, with its timeless allure and quietly hidden depths, was ready to witness a transformation, a moment when the ordinary would shatter into 1,000 extraordinary pieces, each reflecting a secret worth more than any fortune. And so, in the stillness of that early morning, as the city outside awoke to a new day and the promise of undiscovered truths, Elena and Marcus remained at the center of a story that was only beginning. A story woven from the threads of past mistakes, unfulfilled dreams, and the quiet determination to protect a secret so immense it could change lives forever. It was a story that would soon force them both to confront the hidden realities of their own hearts and to question everything they had ever believed about trust, betrayal, and the price of true freedom. In the hushed serenity of the lobby, where every sound, scent, and flicker of light carried meaning, the first act of their intertwined destinies was complete, a delicate prologue to the dramatic and unexpected journey that lay ahead. The day at the Grand broke with an uneasy brightness that revealed every hidden corner and shadow of the hotel. Elena moved about the reception desk with her practiced precision, but today her eyes held a wary glint as she answered phone calls and processed check-ins. The soft chime of the front door mingled with the low murmur of early conversations, yet underneath the everyday bustle, something was shifting. There was a tension in the air, a subtle charge that hinted at a storm of revelations soon to come. In the quiet of her station, Elena's hands trembled ever so slightly as she dialed a number from a slip of paper she always kept hidden. The voice on the other end was low and urgent, a reminder of a past that had followed her like a silent specter. The whispered instructions were barely audible over the static, yet each word carried the weight of a secret that had defined her for years. She ended the call abruptly, her face hardening as if to hide the momentary crack in her armor. Every gesture now seemed calculated, and every smile, though practiced, betrayed a hint of desperation. Meanwhile, Marcus, who had retreated to his modest room after the long, tension-filled night, could not quiet the questions that swirled in his mind. His curiosity was no longer a quiet, distant hum. It had grown into a relentless drumbeat. Sitting by the window and watching the city awaken, he replayed every detail of his brief encounter with Elena. The measured politeness in her voice, the fleeting flash of pain behind her eyes, and the subtle, almost imperceptible glances she cast toward a locked cabinet behind the desk, they all wove a tapestry of mystery that demanded unraveling. As he sipped his weak coffee, he wondered, what would you do if you sensed a secret so heavy it could shatter lives? The question lingered, challenging him to act on his instinct. Later that morning, as guests began to trickle in, the hotel's corridors buzzed with an energy that belied the calm facade of routine. Elena's colleagues moved in sync, their expressions guarded as they carried out their roles. Yet, in the midst of the order, an undercurrent of suspicion began to swell. Henry, ever the quiet observer, lingered near the entrance, his eyes, usually calm and reflective, now flickered with an intensity that suggested he knew more than he let on. He exchanged a knowing glance with Elena, a look that was both comforting and chilling. For Henry had been a loyal friend for many years. But even loyal hearts can harbor hidden agendas when secrets are at stake. It wasn't long before a series of small, unsettling events broke the fragile calm. A guest, distraught and on the verge of tears, rushed into the lobby. His disheveled appearance and frantic whispers to the concierge sent a ripple of alarm through the staff. He mentioned a phone call, one that alluded to financial transactions and a hidden fortune. Though his words were jumbled and he could offer no clear details, his panic was infectious. Elena's face turned pale as she listened, her knuckles whitening around the pen she held. Marcus, hearing the commotion from the hallway, felt a chill run down his spine. There was an unspoken message in the stranger's tone, a hint that the secrets of the Grand were not confined to whispered phone calls, but were now spilling into the open. Later that afternoon, as the hotel reached a lull between check-ins and quiet conversations in the lounge, Marcus found himself drawn by an irresistible pull to explore the area behind the reception desk. The sound of soft, irregular tapping came from a small door partially concealed behind a heavy velvet curtain. His heart pounded as he approached, each step a mix of trepidation and determination. With a cautious hand, he pushed the curtain aside. There, hidden away from prying eyes, was a narrow passage leading to a small, dimly lit room. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and polished wood, a stark contrast to the clean, almost clinical atmosphere of the main lobby. Inside the room, Marcus discovered a collection of documents, old ledgers, and a small, intricately designed safe. The documents detailed transactions and accounts that spoke of vast sums of money, investments, and a network of names that stretched far beyond the modest life of a hotel receptionist. His eyes widened as he skimmed through the papers. The numbers and names hinted at a billion-dollar enterprise, one that had been hidden in plain sight. The revelation was almost too staggering to process. Each page suggested that Elena was not merely a humble gatekeeper to the guests of the Grand, but someone with ties to a world of high finance and deep dark secrets. At that moment, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Marcus quickly closed a folder and hid it behind a stack of old newspapers, his heart racing. He could hear Elena's measured steps approaching. He froze, caught between the urge to escape and the overwhelming need to confront the mystery that had just unfurled before him. Would he dare challenge the very person who had, until now, remained an enigmatic presence in his short but intense acquaintance? The question reverberated in his mind like a challenge. What would you do if you uncovered a secret so vast that it threatened to upend everything you believed about a person? Elena entered the hidden room unexpectedly, her eyes scanning the space as if she sensed an intruder. For a moment, their eyes met in the dim light, hers wide with alarm and his brimming with a mix of shock and determination. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice rising in a harsh, brittle tone that shattered the fragile silence. The confrontation exploded in a burst of tension that filled the cramped room. "I had no," Marcus replied, his tone a mixture of hurt and anger. "All these lies, the hidden room, who are you really?" His words tumbled out, each one laced with betrayal and disbelief. Elena's face contorted in a mix of fury and desperation. "You have no idea what you're meddling with," she snapped, stepping forward. The sharpness of her tone cut through the air, leaving no room for gentle negotiation. In that charged moment, The air seemed to crackle with the intensity of long-suppressed emotions. Elena's eyes flickered between anger and a pained vulnerability as she struggled to maintain control. "You think you can just barge in and expose me?" she hissed, her voice trembling as much as it did with anger. "Some things are not meant for your understanding, Marcus." The accusation stung him deeply. What could she possibly have to hide that would prompt such a fierce reaction? Marcus's voice rose in protest. "If you have nothing to hide, why all the secrets? Why hide behind a facade in a hotel that should be a haven for honesty?" His words echoed in the small space, each sentence a plea for truth. The intensity of the moment built as the two stood locked in confrontation, their faces lit by the weak light of the hidden room. The sound of a distant clock ticked steadily, marking each heart-pounding second of encounter. Before either could speak further, the door to the hidden room burst open with a force that startled both of them. Henry stepped in, his expression unreadable as he took in the scene, a scene that seemed too explosive for the gentle rhythms of the hotel. "Enough," he said quietly, his voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. He cast a long, searching look between Marcus and Elena. "You must understand, some truths are more dangerous than the lies we hide." Henry's intervention only deepened the mystery. His calm yet piercing tone implied that he, too, was aware of more than he let on. "Elena," he continued softly, "you must decide whether you want to continue living a lie or face the consequences of your past." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Elena's eyes flashed with fear and anger as she stared at Henry, her voice faltering for a moment before she regained her composure. "Henry, you don't understand. I did what I had to do to survive," she whispered almost to herself, as if speaking the truth aloud might shatter the delicate balance she had fought so hard to maintain. The confrontation escalated quickly from there. Marcus, fueled by a mixture of betrayal and a desperate desire for clarity, demanded, "Survive? By hiding billions and living a double life? How can you justify such a secret?" His question was not merely an accusation. It was a call to accountability that resonated with anyone who had ever been betrayed by hidden truths. The room filled with a palpable silence as Elena's eyes flickered with unshed tears. For a heartbeat, the woman who had exuded control and authority in the lobby was reduced to a person haunted by the weight of her past. In a sudden, explosive moment of vulnerability, Elena's composure broke. "You have no idea what it was like," she shouted, her voice echoing off the cold walls of the secret room. "Every day, I had to pretend to be someone I wasn't. I had to hide behind that counter, bury the truth so deep that even I could barely recognize it. It wasn't a choice, it was survival." Her words, laced with raw emotion, revealed the torment that lay beneath her carefully constructed facade. Marcus stepped back, taken aback by the intensity of her confession. "Then why keep it hidden? Why risk everything when the truth might set you free?" he challenged, his voice softening as he tried to bridge the chasm of anger and sorrow between them. Yet even as he spoke, the room seemed to pulse with a dangerous energy, a mixture of regret, betrayal, and the unyielding pull of a secret that had now spilled into the open. Henry, standing silently to one side, finally spoke again. "What would you do if you were in her shoes?" he asked softly, almost rhetorically, addressing both Marcus and the unseen audience of anyone who might be witnessing this moment of truth. When survival depends on secrets, can one ever truly be free? His reflective question seemed to challenge not only the characters present, but also every reader who had ever faced the burden of a hidden past. The conversation was abruptly interrupted by a distant commotion. The steady hum of the hotel's everyday life filtered in, the clink of dishes from a restaurant, the murmur of voices from the lounge, and the sound of footsteps echoing down the hall. It was as if the hotel itself was reminding them that outside this small room, life continued unabated, indifferent to the personal storms raging within its walls. Elena, regaining a measure of her former composure, straightened her shoulders and stepped toward a cabinet built into the wall. With trembling fingers, she produced a small, ornate key. "This key," she began, her voice quivering with both resolve and despair, opens a vault beneath the hotel. A vault that holds every record of my past, the investments, the transactions, the money that could change lives. It is my burden, my secret, and the source of everything I have lost. The confession was raw, stripped of the polished veneer that had long concealed her true self. Marcus felt his heart pounding in his chest as he tried to comprehend the magnitude of what she was revealing. His mind raced with questions. How had this secret come to define her? What price had she paid to keep it hidden? And most pressingly, what would happen now that it was all laid bare between them? "Elena, what will you do now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can you ever be free from this burden?" His question was both an inquiry and a plea, a desperate search for a glimmer of hope in a maze of betrayal and regret. Before Elena could answer, Henry's voice broke in once more. "Sometimes," he said softly, "the weight of a secret becomes too much to bear alone. It forces you to make choices that may hurt those you love, but are necessary for your own redemption." His words, filled with both sorrow and wisdom, left a lingering chill in the room. The atmosphere was thick with the promise of further revelations and the pain of past betrayals. Elena hesitated, her eyes darting between Marcus and Henry. In that silent moment, the sound of a distant phone ringing filtered in from the main lobby, a reminder that the world outside continued its relentless pace. "I never wanted any of this," she finally murmured, her voice breaking with emotion. "I built this life to protect myself. Every secret, every lie was a shield, but now it seems the shield is breaking apart." Her admission was raw and unscripted, a moment of honesty that left both Marcus and Henry reeling with empathy and trepidation. As the minutes passed in a charged silence, the hidden documents and the weight of the vault seemed to pulse with the unspoken promise of more secrets yet to be unveiled. Marcus took a hesitant step forward, his eyes filled with both compassion and a stubborn resolve to understand. "Elena, I want to help you," he said softly. "But I can't do that if you keep running from your past. I need to know the truth, even if it hurts." His words, sincere and direct, cut through the tension, leaving a fragile bridge between the two souls. In that instant, the room became a crucible of conflicting emotions: anger, sorrow, hope, and the bitter taste of betrayal. Henry's gaze hardened as he spoke again, his tone now edged with a note of finality. "Sometimes the truth is a double-edged sword," he warned. "It can liberate you, or it can destroy everything you hold dear." His reflective question seemed to echo in the small space, inviting both Marcus and Elena, and perhaps every reader, to ask themselves, when the cost of truth is so high, is it worth the price? Elena's fingers brushed against the cold metal of the key, and for a long moment she seemed lost in memories of a life filled with both promise and regret. Then, with a determined exhale, she moved toward a small door concealed behind a heavy tapestry. "I will open the vault," she declared, her voice steadier now, carrying a note of resignation and defiance in equal measure. "I will face the past, no matter what it reveals." Her words reverberated with the force of an irreversible decision, a step toward exposing everything that had been hidden for so long. Marcus's heart raced as he watched her retreat down the narrow corridor. He felt a surge of conflicting emotions, a mixture of admiration for her courage and a deep-seated fear of what lay within the vault's hidden depths. The question that had haunted him since he discovered the documents now took on a more urgent tone. If you were forced to confront your darkest secrets, how would you find the strength to move forward? The challenge was not just to Elena, but to anyone who had ever been burdened by the weight of their past. The passage Elena walked was dimly lit, the only sound a soft, echoing drip of water that punctuated the silence. Every step seemed to echo with memories of long-forgotten decisions, and as she reached the vault, her hand trembled once more before turning the key in the lock. The heavy door creaked open, revealing a room filled with stacks of ledgers, sealed envelopes, and photographs capturing moments of a life that had been meticulously compartmentalized. In that moment, the truth of her existence was laid bare, not just in ink and paper, but in the very essence of her soul. As Elena began to sort through the evidence of her former life, her mind swirled with memories of ambition, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of survival. Each document was a testament to the double life she had been forced to live, a life where every financial transaction was both a safeguard and a curse. The vault was more than a repository of money. It was a shrine to the choices that had defined her, a silent judge of the sacrifices she had made. And as the light filtered in through a small window high on the wall, dust motes danced in the air, each particle a silent witness to the secrets of the past. Back in the hidden room where Marcus and Henry had waited, the tension was palpable. Marcus paced slowly, his mind churning with the implications of what he had seen and heard. Henry's expression was inscrutable, his eyes fixed on the closed door that now guarded Elena's confessional vault. The silence was broken only by the soft hum of the building's old air conditioning and the occasional creak of the wooden floor. "Do you think she can ever free herself from this burden?" Marcus whispered, more to himself than to Henry. His voice carried the weight of a man who had just glimpsed the hidden underbelly of a life built on secrets. Henry's response was measured and somber. "Freedom is a fragile concept," he said slowly, his eyes narrowing as if trying to peer into the recesses of Elena's soul. "Sometimes, facing the truth can lead to liberation, but other times it only deepens the scars." His reflective tone invited a quiet introspection, challenging both Marcus and any who were willing to consider the true cost of living a lie. Minutes later, the sound of footsteps approached once more from the corridor. Elena emerged from the vault room, her face a canvas of raw emotions, fear, determination, and an undeniable sorrow that spoke of years of hidden pain. She clutched a folder tightly against her chest, as if it were the last remnant of the life she had known. Her eyes met Marcus's, and for a moment, the weight of the secret seemed to bridge the gap between them. "Marcus," she began softly, her voice barely audible, "I never wanted to hurt anyone. I did what I had to do to protect myself." Her admission was fragile, a tentative offering of truth that hung between them like a delicate promise. Marcus stepped forward, his heart aching at the vulnerability in her tone. "Elena, I'm not here to judge you," he replied, his voice gentle despite the storm of emotions raging within him. "I want to understand you, everything, but I need you to trust me enough to share your truth." His words were sincere, inviting her to let down the walls that had kept her isolated for so long. For a long moment, the air was thick with unspoken emotion. Then, with a trembling sigh, Elena slowly opened the folder and began to lay out the contents on a small table in the back room. There were financial statements, faded photographs of a smiling woman who once had dreams as big as the city itself, and handwritten notes that spoke of promises made and broken. As she spoke, her voice grew steadier, and each word revealed layers of her hidden past. "I was once on the verge of something great," she confessed. "I had dreams, plans, a fortune that was meant to change not just my life, but the lives of many. But greed, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of power, those forces conspired against me. I had to bury that life deep inside me, hidden beneath layers of secrecy. Every day at this desk, I live with the fear that one day it will all come crashing down." Her confession was a quiet earthquake, shaking the very foundation of everything Marcus had believed about her. The revelations in that small room ignited a torrent of emotions in Marcus. Anger, sorrow, and a deep-seated empathy collided within him. "Elena, why didn't you let someone help you?" he asked, his tone a mix of frustration and concern. "Carrying that kind of burden alone, it's not something any one person should bear." His question was as much for himself as it was for her. A reminder that secrets, no matter how heavy, could sometimes be shared to ease the pain. As the conversation unfolded, the atmosphere shifted from one of confrontation to a fragile, if temporary, understanding. Yet, even in the midst of this openness, the seeds of doubt and betrayal had already been sown. Henry's presence, calm and observant, hinted at deeper currents at work. His eyes flickered with an emotion that Marcus could not quite decipher, a mixture of regret and something darker, as if he were weighing the cost of loyalty against the promise of personal gain. Outside, the hotel continued its ceaseless rhythm. The clatter of footsteps, the murmur of voices in the corridors, and the occasional ring of a phone served as a constant reminder that life outside these secret chambers was indifferent to personal tragedies. The intensity of the moment in the back room was juxtaposed against the mundane normalcy of the day, creating a surreal contrast that left Marcus wondering, in a world where every smile hides a secret, how do we ever know whom to trust? The fragile truce was soon shattered when a sudden knock at the door startled them all. Elena's eyes widened with alarm as she hesitated before opening it. On the other side stood a sharply dressed man whose presence exuded authority and menace. His gaze swept the room, landing on the documents scattered across the table. "I believe you have something that belongs to me," he said coldly, his voice measured and dangerous. Without waiting for an answer, he stepped inside, his eyes fixed on Elena as if he were assessing a long-forgotten liability. In that instant, the room erupted into chaos. Marcus instinctively moved between the intruder and Elena, his protective instincts flaring despite the myriad of conflicting emotions. "Who are you?" he demanded, his tone laced with anger and confusion. The man merely smirked, his eyes narrowing as he produced a card from his pocket. "I represent interests that have been waiting a long time for this secret to resurface," he said smoothly. The implication was clear. Elena's hidden past was not just a personal burden, it was a commodity in the dangerous world of high-stakes finance and betrayal. Elena's face paled as she recognized the threat in his tone. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her voice barely holding back panic. The man's smile grew colder. "Oh, but you do," he replied, his tone almost mocking. "Every transaction, every secret ledger, every promise you once made is now part of a puzzle that I intend to solve." His words cut through the room like a knife, and for the first time that day, the fragile veneer of calm shattered completely. Henry stepped forward, his presence commanding silence as he attempted to defuse the situation. "This is not the time for threats," he said evenly, though his eyes betrayed a hint of worry. The intruder's gaze shifted between them, as if weighing his next move carefully. "You should have thought about that before you decided to play both sides, Elena," he said softly, directing his words to her with an unmistakable edge of betrayal. In that moment, Marcus realized that even those he had once trusted could be swept up in the dark undercurrents of Elena's hidden world. The confrontation escalated rapidly. The intruder's intentions were clear: to force Elena into revealing everything and to claim a share of the fortune that had once been hers. His presence ignited a desperate panic in her, and she clutched the folder to her chest as if it were a lifeline. "I did what I had to do," she repeated, her voice breaking under the strain of fear and regret. "I never wanted to hurt anyone, but I had no choice." Her words, filled with anguish, resonated with the silent agony of a soul caught in the crossfire of ambition and betrayal. Marcus's heart pounded as he watched the exchange, torn between his growing empathy for Elena and his revulsion at the unfolding threat. "Is this what you've been running from all along?" he asked softly, his eyes meeting hers with a mixture of pity and determination. "To be pursued by those who want to use your pain for their own gain?" His question was both accusatory and compassionate, a call for her to reclaim her power and defy the forces that sought to control her destiny. The man's eyes flashed with a cold certainty as he advanced. "Your time is up," he declared, his tone final. "Either you hand over the truth, or everything will come crashing down, yours included." His words echoed in the small room, a dire ultimatum that forced a painful choice. In that suspended moment, the intensity of the confrontation reached a fever pitch. Elena's mind raced with memories of the promises she had once made to herself, a promise of freedom, of reclaiming a life stolen by circumstances beyond her control. With a defiant cry that trembled between despair and determination, Elena stepped forward. "No," she said, her voice strong despite the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. "I will not let you take away what little I have left of my dignity." The room fell silent as her words hung in the air, charged with the raw emotion of a person who had finally decided to fight back. For a few long, agonizing seconds, time seemed to stand still. Marcus, Henry, and even the intruder paused, each caught in the gravity of a moment that would determine the course of their intertwined fates. Then, as if the tension were too much to bear, the intruder's smile twisted into a snarl. "So be it," he hissed, signaling that the next move would be decisive. In the ensuing chaos, voices overlapped and the clatter of struggle filled the small room. Elena's desperate attempts to shield the folder, Marcus's protective intervention, and Henry's authoritative commands blended into a cacophony of shouts and urgent motions. The intruder, fueled by greed and a cold ambition, lunged for the documents that held the key to Elena's past, while Marcus fought to hold him back. In the struggle, a glass of water toppled over, shattering on the floor and scattering droplets that glistened like shards of broken trust. Amid the tumult, a single, piercing scream broke through the melee, a sound laden with betrayal and sorrow that seemed to echo the hidden grief of everyone present. The echo of that cry forced each person to confront the reality that the consequences of this secret were far more devastating than any of them had ever imagined. It was a moment that demanded reflection. When the past catches up with you, can you ever outrun the consequences of the choices you made? The confrontation left everyone breathless and trembling. As the intruder was finally subdued and led away by a couple of staff members who had arrived on the scene, the room was left in a disordered silence. Elena stood there, her eyes brimming with tears, yet burning with a newfound resolve. Marcus, still shaking from the intensity of the clash, reached out a tentative hand to her. "I'm here," he whispered, his voice soft and sincere. "I want to help you rebuild, even if it means facing everything that hurts." Henry's gaze remained somber as he surveyed the aftermath. "Truth has a way of demanding its due," he murmured, almost to himself. "And sometimes the price of that truth is a betrayal that cuts deeper than any wound." His words were a somber reminder that the path to redemption was often paved with sacrifice and regret. In the quiet that followed, as the echoes of the struggle faded into a heavy silence, Elena took a deep, shuddering breath and slowly gathered the scattered documents. The weight of her past, once hidden behind layers of denial and survival, now lay bare in the dim light of the room. With trembling hands, she placed the folder back on the table and met Marcus's gaze with a mixture of fear and gratitude. "I can't change what I did," she said softly, "but maybe I can start to make it right." Her voice, though small, carried the promise of a hard-won redemption, a spark of hope in a world that had known too much darkness. As the day wore on and the hotel began to settle back into its routine, the events of that hidden room lingered in the minds of everyone involved. Marcus found himself wrestling with a flood of emotions: anger at the betrayal, sorrow for the pain inflicted, and a deep, abiding empathy for the woman whose life had been shattered by secrets. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw the flicker of determination in Elena's eyes and the haunted look on Henry's face, and he wondered what price each of them would ultimately pay for the truth. The tension in the hotel had not dissipated completely. Whispers of the confrontation spread quietly among the staff and a few perceptive guests, each of them left to ponder the meaning of loyalty, trust, and the devastating power of hidden legacies. In hushed tones, they asked themselves, "What would you do if you discovered that the person you trusted was living a lie?" It was a question that echoed in the quiet corners of the lobby, in the silent stares exchanged over polished counters, and in the reflective pauses of those who had witnessed a fragment of a story that was far larger than any one person's life. As dusk fell over the Grand, the hotel took on an even more somber air. The earlier brightness of the day gave way to long shadows and the soft glow of lamplight. Elena sat alone in a quiet corner of the back room, her gaze fixed on the folder that now seemed to hold both the promise of ruin and the possibility of redemption. Marcus joined her, his presence a silent vow of support. "We all have secrets that shape us," he said gently, breaking the silence. "But sometimes facing them is the only way to truly live." His words, simple yet profound, resonated with the quiet determination in her eyes. In that shared moment of vulnerability, the burden of the past felt a little lighter, though the road ahead remained uncertain. The hotel, with all its whispered histories and concealed truths, had borne witness to another chapter of human struggle, a chapter where the quest for truth and the search for redemption were inextricably intertwined. And as the night deepened, leaving behind only the echo of shattered illusions and the fragile hope of new beginnings, the stage was set for the inevitable reckoning. For every unanswered question, every act of betrayal, and every heart-wrenching confession had woven a tapestry of rising action that left everyone, whether they knew it or not, on the edge of an unfolding drama. The secret Elena had guarded for so long was no longer confined to the vault beneath the hotel. It had burst forth into the light of day, demanding accountability, understanding, and the painful process of healing. In that charged atmosphere, as the clock ticked inexorably toward an uncertain future, one truth remained clear. Sometimes, the only way to rebuild is to let the past crash upon you like a tidal wave, and then to find the strength to rise again from its ruins. And for those who had witnessed the events of that day at the Grand, the reflective question persisted. If you were forced to confront the demons of your hidden past, could you ever truly escape the scars they leave behind? The echoes of that day, with all its twists, betrayals, and raw emotion, would linger in the halls of the hotel and in the hearts of those who had borne witness. In the midst of the chaos and the uncertain promise of redemption, one thing was undeniable. The journey had only just begun, and the secrets of the Grand would continue to unravel one painful revelation at a time. The pale light of dawn broke over the Grand like a reluctant promise, revealing every scar and secret etched into its old walls. Outside, the city was already stirring, but within the hotel, a charged silence clung to every corner. In the wake of the earlier turmoil, Elena had retreated into herself, haunted by the weight of the hidden records and the painful confrontation with Marcus. Yet, as the hours passed and the fragile calm returned, an undercurrent of dread began to pulse through the corridors once more, a premonition that nothing could ever be as simple as it seemed. Elena moved slowly through the deserted lobby, her steps measured and heavy. The echoes of shattered glass, whispered accusations, and desperate pleas still lingered in her ears. Every familiar surface, the polished marble, the gleaming reception desk, the faded portraits lining the walls, now seemed to watch her with silent judgment. Marcus, who had taken refuge in the quiet of the upper floors after their bitter clash, felt that same growing unease. He recalled the desperate intensity in Elena's eyes, the painted confession of a life burdened by secrets too dangerous to share, and the bitter taste of betrayal that had left both of them raw and exposed. A low, persistent hum began to resonate through the hallways, a sound that was not part of the hotel's usual rhythm. It started as a vibration beneath the floorboards, rising slowly until it became unmistakably like the distant rumble of an approaching storm. Marcus's curiosity, tempered by the knowledge that some truths carry a heavy price, drove him to investigate. He descended the stairs quietly, his thoughts swirling with questions. Had Elena's hidden past been uncovered by more than just a chance intrusion? Were the dark forces that once lurked in the shadows now gathering to reclaim what they believed was theirs? In the dim light of the early morning, Marcus followed the sound down a narrow corridor that led him to an unassuming service door. He paused, heart pounding, before pushing it open. Beyond lay a long-forgotten wing of the hotel, one that had long been sealed off from the public, its history wrapped in layers of dust and silence. As he stepped inside, the air changed. It grew colder, heavy with the scent of aged paper and something metallic, as if the building itself were mourning lost time. There, scattered across a long table, were more documents, files, ledgers, and photographs that confirmed Elena's secret extended far beyond simple survival. The numbers were staggering, hinting at a fortune amassed through intricate deals and desperate choices. But intertwined with those records were hints of betrayal. Names in red ink, dates circled with urgency, and cryptic notes that spoke of alliances forged in darkness. At that, very moment, a door slammed behind him. Marcus spun around to see Elena standing in the doorway, her eyes glistening with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "Marcus," she cried, her voice trembling as she stepped forward. "What have you done?" Her tone was not merely accusatory, it was a raw, anguished plea, as if the very act of discovery had unleashed the long-held torment within her. I had no, Marcus stammered, his own voice wavering with guilt and determination. "I thought if I understood your secret, I could help you. But now it feels like I've only made things worse." His words hung in the cold air, a fragile bridge built on shared pain and desperate hope. Elena's face twisted as she struggled to contain a tide of emotions. "You think you can just barge in and expose what I've spent my life trying to hide?" She shouted suddenly, the anger in her voice echoing off the ancient walls. "You don't understand the danger that secret brings, the price I've paid, the sacrifices I've made." For a long moment, neither spoke as the silence stretched between them. The truth lay raw and unguarded, a chasm that threatened to swallow them whole. Before Marcus could respond, a sharp, insistent knock reverberated from the corridor outside. The sound was cold and deliberate, a prelude to calamity. Elena's eyes darted to the door, and as she moved to answer it, a sudden realization flashed across her face. "They're coming," she whispered, more to herself than to Marcus. Outside, the service door creaked open to reveal a group of sharply dressed men, their faces set in grim determination. Leading them was a tall figure with a scar running down one cheek, a man whose presence exuded authority and menace. His eyes swept the room slowly, absorbing every detail of the documents, the huddled forms, and the palpable tension that filled the air. "Elena," he said in a voice as cold as ice, "the time has come to settle old debts." His words cut through the silence, and for an instant the room felt as though it were shrinking under the weight of impending judgment. Elena's expression hardened, and a fierce, unyielding defiance took over her features. "You have no right," she spat, stepping between Marcus and the intruders. "I did what I had to do to survive. You're the ones who have no right to my past." The words, sharp and unfiltered, resonated with a raw desperation that made every observer hold their breath. The leader's gaze shifted to Marcus, and a slow, mocking smile curled on his lips. "And you, the black guest, thought you could play detective in matters that far exceed your understanding?" he said, his tone laced with contempt. At that moment, the room charged with electricity that no one could ignore. The final confrontation was upon them. A collision of past sins, hidden agendas, and the desperate quest for redemption. Marcus's eyes flashed with indignation as he stepped forward, his voice rising despite the danger. "I did what I had to do, just like you did. Elena," he declared, "we're all trying to survive, aren't we? But hiding behind secrets and lies only makes us prisoners of our own past." His words, fueled by both anger and compassion, rang out with a clarity that cut through the tension. "I may be a guest in this hotel, but I've seen enough to know that the truth deserves to be known." For a long, tense moment, the intruders exchanged glances, their expressions inscrutable. Then the scarred leader spoke again, his voice calm but deadly. "The truth, Mr. Marcus, is a dangerous thing, and sometimes the price of truth is blood." His words were a threat, a promise of retribution that sent shivers down the spines of everyone present. In the ensuing seconds, chaos erupted. The intruders advanced, and Elena's eyes burned with fierce determination as she clutched the folder to her chest, the physical embodiment of a past filled with hope, regret, and sacrifice. With a cry that resonated with both defiance and despair, she hurled the folder toward Marcus. "Take it, and learn the truth you so desperately seek," she shouted, her voice cracking under the strain of her emotions. Marcus caught the folder, his hands trembling as he realized that within those pages lay not just financial records, but a chronicle of betrayal, lost dreams, and a legacy that had shaped every decision Elena had ever made. As he skimmed through the documents in a desperate bid to understand, the scarred leader lunged forward. A scuffle ensued, A flurry of movement, shouts, and the clanging of objects that filled the space with a dissonant symphony of violence. In the melee, Marcus found himself pinned against a cold, hard wall by one of the intruders. He struggled, his mind racing with the urgency of the moment. "Elena, please!" He managed to shout between gasps, his eyes searching for any sign that she was unharmed. Elena, caught in her own battle with the leader, fought with a ferocity born of years of pent-up pain. Her eyes met his briefly, and in that silent exchange, she conveyed both apology and a steely resolve that refused to be broken. Then, as if the universe itself were determined to tip the scales of fate, a new voice rang out, clear, authoritative, and resolute. "Enough!" The command came from a figure emerging from the far end of the corridor, where the golden light of day struggled to penetrate the gloom. It was Henry, his expression transformed from somber reflection to one of unyielding resolve. "This ends now." His words had the power to still the chaos, and for a moment the intruders hesitated. Henry stepped forward, his eyes locking onto the scarred leader. "You have no claim here," he said firmly. "No one has the right to seize the past, to use it as a weapon against those who only seek redemption." His tone brooked no argument, and his presence shifted the balance in that crowded room. The leader's gaze flickered with uncertainty, and for a heartbeat, the silence that followed was filled with the promise of change. But then, in a shocking turn that neither Marcus nor Elena had anticipated, Henry's eyes darkened. The calm authority in his voice wavered, and a bitter smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Or perhaps," he murmured, "it's time to pay for the sins of the past." In that instant, the truth revealed itself in a way that shattered every expectation. Henry, whose quiet wisdom had always been a beacon of guidance, now betrayed a secret of his own, a secret that linked him inextricably to the dark legacy that Elena had fought so hard to conceal. The intruders, sensing an opening, pressed their advantage. In a sudden, coordinated move, they lunged toward Henry. But even as chaos threatened to overwhelm them all, Marcus and Elena found themselves united by a common purpose. With renewed determination, Marcus broke free from his captor, his eyes blazing as he rushed to Elena's side. "Henry, what are you doing?" he demanded, his voice a mix of shock and betrayal. "We trusted you." Henry's expression was a storm of conflicting emotions, regret, bitterness, and a cold resolve that left no room for explanation. "I did what was necessary," he replied evenly, his words echoing in the suddenly stilled room. "For too long, I have watched secrets fester and corruption thrive in the shadows. Today, I reclaim the power that was stolen from me." His declaration cut through the air like a knife, leaving everyone reeling in its wake. Elena's eyes widened in disbelief, and for a long moment she stood frozen, torn between the man she thought she knew and the betrayal that now laid bare before her. "Henry," she whispered, her voice cracking, "you were my friend, my only friend." Her words were a plea for understanding, a desperate hope that the man before her could remember the bond they had once shared. But Henry's gaze was unyielding, his heart hardened by years of silent suffering. "Friendship is a luxury in a world built on lies," he said coldly. "Today, we all must pay for our debts." With that, he turned to the scarred leader, nodding in silent command. The leader advanced once more, and in the ensuing struggle, a final, decisive confrontation unfolded. Marcus, driven by a mixture of betrayal and the fierce desire to protect Elena, rallied his strength and stepped forward. "I won't let you take her, or her secret, without a fight," he roared, his voice raw and unfiltered. The fight that ensued was brutal and unrelenting, a clash of ideals, blood, and unspoken truths. In the midst of fists and shattered glass, each blow carried the weight of years spent in silence, of dreams deferred and lives turned upside down. As the confrontation reached its zenith, Elena found herself face to face with the scarred leader. With every fiber of her being, she fought back, not just with physical strength, but with the power of a woman who had borne the burdens of a secret worth billions. "I did it for survival," she cried out, her voice rising above the chaos. "I never asked for your mercy or your judgment. You have no right to decide my fate." Her words, filled with anguish and defiance, reverberated in the space between them, a final plea for understanding that fell on ears too long deafened by greed. In that final, heart-wrenching moment, the unexpected happened. Marcus, battered and bloodied but unbroken, stepped between Elena and the leader. His eyes met hers, and in that silent exchange, they acknowledged a truth that had been buried deep within, that no secret, however costly, was worth sacrificing the possibility of redemption. "We can choose a different path," Marcus said softly, his voice carrying the weight of hard-won wisdom. "The truth may be painful, but it is the only way to heal." His words, gentle yet unyielding, offered a sliver of hope amid the ruin of shattered trust. The intruders, witnessing this moment of unity, hesitated as if caught in a collective pause of realization. The scarred leader's sneer faltered, and for a heartbeat, the room was filled with the sound of ragged breaths and the distant echo of a clock marking the passage of fate. Then, as if time itself had decided that enough blood had been shed, the distant wail of sirens pierced the air, a reminder that the long arm of justice was not blind to the truth. In that charged instant, Henry's resolve cracked. His eyes, once so steely and determined, filled with a dawning remorse. "This isn't how it was meant to be," he murmured, his voice trembling as he sank to his knees. The betrayal in his heart, laid bare by his own ambition, now left him vulnerable, a casualty of the very secrets he had sought to control. The sirens grew louder, and within moments, the sound of approaching police cars mingled with the chaotic remnants of the struggle. The intruders, their purpose thwarted by the unexpected arrival of authority, began to retreat into the shadows from whence they came. The scarred leader cast one final, venomous look at Marcus and Elena before disappearing into the gathering darkness. With the arrival of the police, a heavy calm descended upon the battered room. Officers moved quickly to secure the scene, their presence a stark counterpoint to the raw emotions that still simmered in the air. Elena, still clutching the folder, sank against a wall, tears mixing with the sweat and blood that stained her face. Marcus knelt beside her, his hand reaching out in a silent offer of support. "We did it," he whispered, though his voice was filled with uncertainty. "The truth is out, even if it costs us so much." For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence was profound, a weighted pause that allowed the gravity of the day's events to settle in. Then, as one of the officers began questioning the witnesses, Marcus rose and looked directly into the eyes of everyone gathered, as if daring them to face the moral reckoning of their actions. "What is trust?" he asked softly, his voice carrying far beyond the confines of the ruined room. "How do we forgive the betrayals that haunt us, and how do we move forward when every secret carries the weight of 1,000 broken promises?" His words were not merely rhetorical, they were an invitation to each soul present to reflect on the true cost of hidden truths and the potential for redemption in a world marred by betrayal. Elena, wiping away tears, gathered her strength and faced Marcus. "I have lived a lifetime in the shadows," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. "I built my life on secrets and sacrifices, thinking that one day I could outrun the past. But the truth is that we are all prisoners of our own decisions. I hid my pain behind a desk, hoping it would never catch up with me. And yet here we are." Her words, laden with regret and newfound resolve, resonated deeply in the stillness of that final hour. As the police took statements and the intruder's threat receded into the dark corners of the hotel's past, Marcus turned to address not only Elena and the weary officers, but the unseen audience beyond these walls. "Every one of us carries secrets," he said, his voice now calm and reflective. "Secrets that define us, haunt us, and sometimes even destroy us. But it is only by facing these secrets, by choosing to trust, and by daring to forgive, that we can hope to find redemption." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in. "What would you do if you had to face the demons of your hidden past? How far would you go to reclaim your truth?" In that moment, as the first rays of the new day broke through the shattered windows and illuminated the battered remnants of the confrontation, a fragile sense of hope emerged. Elena's billion-dollar secret, once a symbol of the burdens she had borne alone, now transformed into a catalyst for change. The pain of betrayal and the scars of hidden misdeeds could no longer be hidden beneath polite smiles or guarded glances. They had been exposed, raw, and undeniable for all to see. The aftermath of that tumultuous day rippled through the Grand like a cleansing tide. The hotel, with its storied past and secret-filled corridors, would forever bear the marks of this confrontation. A turning point where darkness met light, where betrayal gave way to the possibility of redemption. In the days that followed, as Elena faced the consequences of her hidden life and Marcus struggled to reconcile his own complicated feelings, a quiet transformation began to take shape. Those who had witnessed the clash of ideals started to speak of the day not only as a tragedy of hidden sins, but as a lesson in the power of truth. For Elena, the path ahead was uncertain and fraught with pain. Yet, in that uncertainty lay a chance to rebuild, to embrace honesty, to seek forgiveness, and to let the light of a hard-won truth guide her steps. Marcus, too, emerged changed. His journey had led him through betrayal and heartache, but in the crucible of that final confrontation, he discovered that true courage often means standing up for what is right, even when it means challenging those we thought we knew. And as for Henry, his fall from grace served as a grim reminder that the pursuit of power through deceit only deepens the wounds of the soul. In the quiet that followed the storm, as the hotel's staff and guests slowly returned to their routines, the memory of that fateful day lingered like an indelible mark, a reminder that every secret, no matter how deeply buried, has the power to change lives when brought into the light. The Grand, once a mere backdrop to the fleeting dramas of everyday life, had become a living testament to the complexity of trust, the sting of betrayal, and the painful but necessary journey toward redemption. Now, as the city outside awakened to a new day filled with possibilities, Marcus stood by the large bay window of the lobby, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The rising sun painted the sky in hues of gold and pink, a gentle reminder that every ending is also the promise of a new beginning. In that quiet moment of reflection, he spoke softly, as if addressing not only those present but every person who had ever wrestled with the ghosts of their past. "We are all flawed," he said. "We carry scars, secrets, and the burdens of choices made in desperation. Yet it is in our willingness to confront these truths, to acknowledge our failures and learn from them, that we truly begin to live. Today, I ask you, what is your secret? What are the truths that you hide? And how might they set you free if you only had the courage to share them?" His words, sincere and unadorned, seemed to echo off the walls of the Grand and into the hearts of those who listened. The final call to action was not a demand, but an invitation, a plea for honesty in a world too often dominated by fear and pretense. "Share your thoughts," Marcus continued, his voice gentle yet insistent. "Reflect on the cost of betrayal, the weight of hidden truths, and the transformative power of forgiveness. In our vulnerability, we find our strength. In our willingness to face our past, we find the hope for a better tomorrow." In that moment, as the remnants of conflict and the promise of a new dawn mingled in the quiet air, the legacy of Elena's secret and the trials it had wrought became more than a story of loss and betrayal. It evolved into a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that even the most devastating secrets can lead to the most profound truths when they are finally brought into the light. And so, as the day unfurled with all its uncertainties and hopes, the Grand stood as a silent witness to a new chapter. A chapter where trust, though fragile, was given another chance to flourish, where the pain of the past could be transformed into the promise of a future built on honesty and redemption. For Elena, Marcus, and all those whose lives had been touched by the events of that fateful night, the journey was far from over. Yet, in every step forward, there lies a lesson that the courage to reveal our hidden selves is the only way to break the chains of our own making and to embrace the possibility of true freedom. As you close this chapter of our story, take a moment to ponder. In your own life, what secrets do you carry, and how might they shape your destiny? What would you have done in the face of betrayal in the pursuit of truth? Share your thoughts, And let this tale be a mirror reflecting the complex, often painful journey toward redemption that we all must at some point face. The sun now climbed higher. Its light, a quiet promise that even after the darkest of nights, a new day always begins. And with it, the chance to forge a future defined not by the shadows of our past, but by the strength we find in our willingness to be truly, unabashedly ourselves. If you found this story powerful, make sure to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Your support helps us bring more important stories to light.